The next biological crisis might not start in a rainforest, a farm, or a crowded market. It might start on a laptop, because biology is becoming a software problem. In 2025, one of the most uncomfortable signals came from a place that isn't usually framed as a biodefense actor, the AI industry. Frontier models started demonstrating that they can meaningfully assist with advanced life science tasks, and, in controlled evaluations, with parts of the how to thinking that bad actors would need to develop biological harm. At the same time, researchers showed something even more concrete. Current gene synthesis screening, one of the key choke points meant to stop dangerous biology from being ordered, can be strained by modern generative protein design. So here's the question that matters for national security. If the threat landscape is changing from nature makes the pathogen to someone designed around our defenses, why is policymakers' default still to treat a natural pandemic and an intentional biological attack as basically the same problem? Quick disclosure, this video is inspired by the article Biodefense Blind Spot, Why Washington Confuses Pandemics with Bioweapons, written by Nabi and published by War on the Rocks on February 10, 2026. You'll find it linked in the description, alongside every other source used for this script. For decades, US biodefense has leaned on a big, logical idea: all hazards. Whether a biological incident is natural, accidental, or deliberate, the country needs broadly similar capabilities: detection, public communication, medical countermeasures, surge capacity, and recovery. That logic is literally embedded in US strategy. The 2022 National Biodefense Strategy sets 5 goals and frames biodefense to cover biological incidents whether naturally occurring, accidental, or deliberate in origin. And yet, what Nabi argues, persuasively, is that AI plus synthetic biology breaks the deeper assumption behind all hazards. Not because pandemics don't matter, but because deliberate threats can now be tailored at the design stage to exploit the seams of a system optimized for natural outbreaks. To see why, we need to separate 3 things that are often blurred together: 1. The biology; 2. The workflow from idea to pathogen; 3. The way governments organize for response. Start with the biology. No, today's AI cannot reliably design a brand new, pandemic-capable virus from scratch. A major 2025 report from National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine emphasizes that transmissible, self-replicating pathogens remain hard to design de novo, in part because biological systems are complex and because high-quality data is limited. But that same report is very clear about what is already feasible: designing biomolecules, like proteins and toxins, and redesigning known harmful molecules in ways that could bypass simple, homology-based screening. That matters because in modern biotech, code doesn't stay digital. The common engineering pipeline is often described as design, build, test, learn. If the design step gets faster and smarter, especially for people with less experience, barriers fall even if wet lab work is still hard. Now layer in the evidence from AI evaluations. OpenAI's O3, announced in April 2025, was presented as a powerful reasoning model, and OpenAI's preparedness framework explicitly treats biology as a domain where safeguards must tighten as capabilities climb. Meanwhile, researchers at SecureBio and the Center for AI Safety introduced the Virology Capabilities Test, a benchmark built from troubleshooting tasks created with expert virologist input. In their reported results, OpenAI's O3 achieved higher accuracy than most human experts on subsets tailored to those expert subdomains, an expert-level signal on a narrow but important class of practical lab problems. Anthropic, for its part, published a system card describing biorisk evaluations for Claude Opus 4, including uplift studies examining how much model assistance could improve a user's ability to draft a bioweapons acquisition plan. However you assess the limits of these trials, the meta-signal is hard to ignore. Model developers themselves are now treating biology as a Tier 1 dual-use risk. So the transformation is not AI will invent the next pandemic pathogen tomorrow. The transformation is this: AI is compressing expertise, it's pushing capability earlier in the chain, from you must already know how to do this to you can get a lot farther with guidance. And that changes what biodefense has to prioritize. If you value evidence-based analysis on national security and emerging tech, please hit like and subscribe. It's a small thing, but it directly helps this channel keep doing deep research instead of reaction content. Thank you. Now, back to the analysis. Here's the uncomfortable reality: modern biology is increasingly mail order. If you can order DNA, you can build. That's why sequence screening is treated as a critical control point. The US government published updated screening guidance in 2023 covering synthetic nucleic acids and sequences of concern, and industry groups such as the International Gene Synthesis Consortium have long-standing screening protocols. But 2 things are true at the same time. First, much of this system is still guidance and voluntary self-regulation, not universal, audited enforcement. Second, AI-assisted design is exposing how brittle purely sequence-based screening can be. In October 2025, a cross-sector team including Microsoft researchers published a study in Science assessing whether open-source AI protein design tools could generate redesigned harmful proteins that evade screening tools used in nucleic acid synthesis pipelines, and then describing patchwork to improve detection. That nuance matters. The result is not just a warning. It's also a mitigation case study, evidence that defenders can adapt quickly when they measure the vulnerability and coordinate a fix. But from a strategy standpoint, it still proves a point: the choke point is being stress-tested by capabilities that already exist in the commercial ecosystem. And if screening can be defeated at the design stage, Then pandemic preparedness tools, vaccines, hospital surge, clinical surveillance, become the second line of defense, not the first. Now we get to the core of the blind spot. A natural pandemic and a deliberate biological attack can look similar to a hospital on day one. People show symptoms, clinics fill up, public health scrambles, but the problems diverge fast. Natural outbreaks usually emerge through spillover and transmission dynamics shaped by ecology, chance, and evolution. That's why public health invests heavily in One Health Systems. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention summarizes scientific estimates that most new or emerging infectious diseases in people come from animals. Deliberate attacks, especially those facilitated by modern design tools, are about adversary choice, choice of target, choice of timing, choice of agent characteristics, choice of delivery method. And here's Nabi's argument in plain language. When Washington, D.C. policy machinery treats both as one category, it tends to overfund what works for pandemics and underbuild what's needed for deterrence and interdiction. We can see the integrated mindset in the 2022 National Biodefense Strategy, which explicitly unifies natural, accidental, and deliberate biological threats under one umbrella, while implementation spans a long list of departments and agencies. And Government Accountability Office has warned that biodefense efforts can be fragmented and that unclear processes, roles, and responsibilities for joint decision-making can limit effective strategy implementation. There's also a psychological and political layer that often gets overlooked. As scholar Michelle Bentley has argued, biological weapons are widely treated as uniquely repugnant, a taboo reinforced by fear of blowback, contagion, and international norms embedded in the Biological Weapons Convention. In that sense, COVID-19 didn't make bioweapons feel more usable. It showed the world how catastrophic uncontrolled disease can be. But taboo logic has a built-in weakness. It restrains states more than it restrains every potential actor. If AI tools reduce the expertise barrier, and if synthesis and automation keep getting cheaper, the risk can shift toward smaller groups and individuals who may not feel bound by the same strategic or moral constraints. So the blind spot is not that the US has no biodefense. The blind spot is that the system is optimized for the wrong kind of uncertainty. Pandemics are uncertainty from nature. Bioweapons are uncertainty from an intelligent opponent. This is where the all-hazards approach starts to break. Detection. Pandemic detection is built around clinical signals. People get sick, samples get collected, genomes get sequenced, epidemiology maps spread. Attack detection requires additional signals upstream of illness, suspicious acquisition, anomalous synthesis activity, and forensic indicators designed to support attribution and response. Even the best public health surveillance cannot replace intelligence and law enforcement capabilities designed for deliberate threats. Medical countermeasures. Pandemic preparedness made massive investments in platform speed. Vaccine and manufacturing acceleration is the clearest example, including estimates that Operation Warp Speed involved roughly $18 billion in investment focused on late-stage development and manufacturing scale-up. That model is powerful against a naturally emerging pathogen, where the challenge is speed and scale, but an intelligent adversary gets a vote. If a threat can be designed to evade predictable countermeasures, or to exploit gaps in diagnostics or distribution, then go faster is not enough. You need diversity, adaptability, and better upstream interdiction. Attribution and deterrence. A virus doesn't have an address. An attacker does. Biodefense against deliberate use requires the ability to attribute credibly so that deterrence and response are possible. After the 2001 anthrax letters, whole genome sequencing and microbial forensics became central to attribution-focused investigation debates and methods. But attribution is not just a lab technique. It's a system. Forensics, intelligence, chain of custody, and international coordination. If your strategy treats pandemics and attacks as the same event, attribution becomes a box to check, not a core capability. So what should change, not replace pandemic preparedness? That would be suicidal. The goal is separation where it matters, and integration where it truly overlaps. Here are 4 concrete shifts, grounded in current policy language and the evidence base, not science fiction. First, treat AI bio as an upstream national security problem. America's AI Action Plan, released July 23, 2025 by the White House, explicitly states that frontier models may pose national security risks including the development of chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, or explosives weapons, and it calls for evaluation of frontier AI systems for national security risks led by Kaiser with relevant interagency expertise. Second, strengthen gene synthesis screening beyond voluntary patchwork. The 2023 Synthetic Nucleic Acid Screening Guidance lays out baseline standards and emphasizes the need to screen beyond simple regulated agent lists toward sequences of concern. The 2024 OSTP framework for nucleic acid synthesis screening aimed to tie adherence to federal life sciences funding, setting an intended effective date for covered procurements. But that framework was constructed under Executive Order 14110, and the White House later revoked EO 14110 in January 2025. Whatever your politics, that sequence shows the real vulnerability, policy whiplash, if gene synthesis screening is a national security choke point. It cannot hinge on temporary executive priorities. It needs durable standards, clear incentives, and, eventually, auditable compliance. Third, build a detection architecture that is not only clinical. The National Biosurveillance Integration Center is statutorily tasked to integrate and analyze data to rapidly identify and track biological events of national concern, and DHS's Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction Office describes its mission as preventing WMD attacks against the United States. But AI-enabled biological risk is not just another outbreak. It's a design and logistics challenge spanning public health, intelligence, commerce, and cybersecurity. A serious detection architecture would include better coordination among biosurveillance, export controls, synthesis providers, and model evaluations, without turning legitimate science into a police state. Fourth, make the incentives align. A market where responsible actors absorb costs and irresponsible actors win on speed is a market that selects for danger. That's why even industry-led protocols like those from the International Gene Synthesis Consortium, historically described as representing a very large share of commercial gene synthesis capacity, are not enough on their own, especially without standardized auditing or universal coverage mechanisms. In other words, voluntary norms are necessary, but not sufficient. Here's the bottom line. The US biodefense enterprise was designed for a world where nature was the main designer of pathogens. In that world, an all-hazards model was efficient, common capabilities, shared platforms, one system. But AI and synthetic biology are changing the upstream economics of capability. They lower the expertise needed to do meaningful work. They stress-test screening choke points, and they create the possibility, over time, of threats designed to exploit our assumptions. That doesn't mean panic, it means clarity. Pandemic preparedness is about resilience against nature. Bioweapons defense is about resilience against intent. If Washington keeps treating those as the same problem, we'll keep buying the right tools for the last crisis, and missing the ones that could stop the next one. Before we close, if this kind of serious, research-driven defense analysis matters to you, please hit like and subscribe. It genuinely helps keep this project going and allows me to keep producing deep dive videos like this instead of surface-level reaction content. And leave a comment with your take. Should Washington split pandemic preparedness and bioweapons defense more clearly, or can one system still do both? Your feedback helps shape the next videos on this channel. And one more quick disclosure, this video was inspired by Biodefense Blind Spot, Why Washington Confuses Pandemics with Bioweapons, written by Nabi and published by War on the Rocks. That article is linked in the description, along with the full research list used for this script, including government strategy documents, scientific reports, and technical studies referenced throughout the analysis.